Ken, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Good to be with you again.
So this redistricting in Texas, you've been in politics a while. I have as well. I've never heard the rhetoric like I mean, this is redistricting. And it is democracy is under attack. I cannot believe this. Is there any question about the legality or the constitutional nature of what's going on in Texas? Let's just start with that.
No, that's what they're so upset about. It's perfectly legal. It's perfectly constitutional. And, and they're not doing it. Let's be really clear. It is funny to watch them go, oh, yeah, we'll redistrict Massachusetts. Really? What are you going to do? Because in 2020 and 2021, the radical left pushed all of their elected Democrats to literally bend the needle on redistricting everywhere they could. In New York, they tried to break the law to redistrict more harshly, and the courts wouldn't let them. They made them, strangely enough, obey their own laws with respect to redistricting. So, and Republicans always, we always play nice. I always joke about I'm a pro-lifer, and all our pro-lifers are one of our biggest problems. Now, I don't suffer from this, is how nice we are. Well, that doesn't work in politics. I'm sorry. And Donald Trump, God bless him, doesn't suffer from that. And look, when Abbott locks his teeth in on something, I wish there were other things he'd lock his teeth in on, like defending the border when Joe Biden was president. But when he locks his teeth in on something, he follows through. He finds ways to make it happen.
So it's funny because Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader in the House, said that Republicans are trying to steal the midterm elections by redistricting Kentucky. I don't understand. Why is this? I mean, and I'm being serious when I ask you this question. Like, why is it suddenly that the rhetoric has changed in this instance? Like you mentioned Massachusetts, there isn't a single Republican, and there used to be. I mean, there used to be a couple of guys, Peter Blute to be Torkelson. Yeah. I mean, this is going back in the late 90s, but like they redistricted the entire state. Maryland, next to where you and I live in Virginia, is now down to one single district.
And
Andy Harris.
They wanted to get rid of Andy Harris. The only thing that stood in the way of that was Larry Hogan.
Well, and a bridge.
And a bridge. Yeah. Well.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I honestly, and I'm being serious, like as a political student of politics here, why is it that suddenly it's threat to democracy, stealing elections? And I ask you this as someone like, we know they're going to do it again, right? In other words, they did it to Massachusetts. They did it in Maryland. They've done it in Illinois. They've done it in California. They've done it in New York, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if I were a Democrat, and I'm being serious when I ask you this, I would say, guys, we got to be careful because we're going to do it again. And then they're just going to say, or do they just say no one's going to care or remember?
So let's think about it this way. If Congress put in place national redistricting requirements that were actually normal, like you keep cities and counties together and, those kinds of things. And of course, they have the same number of people in them, and we can come back to that. Well, which people? Citizens, non-citizens, but and that were applied across the country. Republicans would benefit for the simple reason that when you measure out all of the extreme redistricting behavior, it's done very heavily in favor of Democrats overall. But they're screaming and yelling because the biggest Republican state is now looking at doing a mid-decade redistricting. By the way, a state that got the short end of the stick in the census 5 years ago, that we now all know, and there isn't really any debate, that the 2020 census was wrong. And it was wrong.
In what way? Explain that. Explain that. Explain when you say they got it wrong. What do you mean?
So a new feature of the census was implemented in 2020, and it failed miserably. The new feature was a privacy algorithm that was intended to, ultimately make people more comfortable answering questions and things. But it did that by intentionally introducing data noise so that I couldn't assign a particular answer to a particular person. And the result of that was much messier in rural and suburban areas, which tend to be more Republican on the scale of population density. And those are the ones that got messed up the most, undercounted the most. And so the result was that in a state like Texas, they were counted short by an enormous number of people. And that wasn't realized officially until after the census, because the census is done on this snapshot day. It's like, what is the population on April 1st of 2020? Boom. It's like we take a snapshot of the country, and that's the only thing they'll work off of. Well, I'm a senior fellow at the Center for Renewing America. One of the things we're advocating is to go back and fix the census. Let me be clear, that doesn't mean that states would have to do redistricting, but the data would be corrected at least, so we would know just how bad it was. And states like Texas and Ohio that want to do a mid-decade redistricting would actually have accurate data to work with.
All right, I hate to interrupt this conversation, but tonight, if you are looking for a great night's sleep, I'm going to help you big time. I switched over to Boll Branch sheets, and my goodness, they have made a huge difference. They are so comfortable to get into every night. I love them so much. I literally ordered a second pair the other night and paid for them myself. That's how great these things are. And you can join me as well. The thread count, the quality is unbelievable. There's a 30-day guarantee, so you literally have nothing to lose. If you want a better night's sleep, it starts with your bedding. Go to bollandbranch.com/Spicer to save 15%. That's BOLLAND branch.com/Spicer for 15% off and free shipping. bollandbranch.com/Spicer for a great night's sleep. All right, back to the conversation. It's not time to go to sleep just yet. All right, I want to get to the census in a minute because President Trump making some noise on that. But let me just kind of go down the rabbit hole of redistricting for a few minutes more, and then we want to pivot to this. So right now, there's like the Democrats in Texas have fled. And I keep saying they're going to political sanctuary cities because they're going to Chicago and Boston, New York. I mean, that should be that we should brand that. They're political sanctuary cities. Yeah. There is nothing lost on me that they're literally going to cities that have gerrymandered states. Right. I mean, it's kind of funny. You run to Illinois that completely gerrymandered to claim that your rights are being under attack from gerrymandering, which is not lost on anybody. But in Texas, they're currently fining these Democrats $500 a day. Beto O'Rourke is saying that he's going to pick up some of the tab. The attorney general is going to begin to ask the courts in Texas to remove them. The United States Senator John Cornyn, who's also a former state attorney general, is asking the FBI. So if just as you are a former state official, a former attorney general, what should they face for not doing their job legally, not politically, legally? What consequence?
So legally, those fines were passed into law after the last time this stunt was pulled in Texas. So, I mean, that's the law of Texas. They're not making that up. That was on the books when these people left the state. I don't know how tightly it's drawn. For example, is it pulled out of their pay? So Beto O'Rourke might want to help him out with it, but is that a political contribution? You start getting into real...
I thought the same thing. I said to myself, how is that not a...
Real messes.
Right. Also, it's not just that, but it's $500 a day, and you do the math, and that starts adding up. I don't know how much a state legislator in Texas makes, but you start doing the math. Huh?
Very little. They don't make much at all.
Okay, so do the math on that. That's $2,500 a week. You start adding that up. I don't care how much you make. I mean, within a month, you're at, 10 grand? 10 grand. I mean, that's real money.
That's real money, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So I got to think that so let's just beyond the fines, is there anything legally, can they be arrested or be just, I mean, I get it, they're not doing their job, but is that a violation of the law or is that just a Texas thing?
No, it is a violation of the law. Every state, I don't know of any state, nor or the federal Congress, House or Senate, that does not have the ability of the body to compel the participation of its members. That is not unique to Texas at all. It's just in the last couple of years, we've all seen it play out in Texas, but that power exists all over the country.
Interesting.
It's not unique.
They have a super lawyer that they like to call on the left. His name is Mark Elias, and this is a guy who's been mastering the redistricting efforts on the Democratic side for a long time. Suddenly, he's now talking about he's been sanctioned in past legislative actions. But how big of are we on equal footing when it comes to our side, what we have in terms of legal support and redistricting, and what they have on their side?
Yeah. So, two answers to that. One, let's start with Mark Elias. He's not a very good lawyer. He's really not. And as you point out, he's been sanctioned a couple of times. And look, whatever people watching you and I think about lawyers, that is not common. It is extremely rare for a lawyer to ever suffer a reprimand and certainly a court sanction. And he's had it happen a couple of times, including for some very serious lying to a court. He's just not a very good lawyer. And in fact, other Democrat lawyers, if you didn't quote them on it, would tell you the same thing. He's brought cases that really set the law forward for us, backwards for them, like the Brnovich case in Arizona, which was a watershed case in the Voting Rights Act front. And his fellow Democrats were saying, no, don't bring this case. It's a bad set of facts. And he wanted to be the lawyer bringing it, and he did, and they lost. They got their butt kicked. So he's not that good. They throw a lot of money at it. But the fact is they do have more lawyers doing this kind of work on the left than on the right. And that goes back 21 years. That's a very specific number. It goes back to 2004, and it began with the Turn Colorado Blue project, which worked very well for them, and they took it nationally. This is Soros funded, along with other billionaires who we don't know as well, who have for over 20 years financed the efforts to elect secretaries of state long ago, long before we were paying attention. You remember the Minnesota case with Al Franken, where that Secretary of State was really the Soros's machine first big win. That's where real dividends were paid. That Secretary of State was a Soros Secretary of State, and they effectively changed the law to have Al Franken jump over, what was Norm's last name? Coleman, thank you. I should remember this. Over Norm Coleman, who won that election under the laws of Minnesota, he won that election. And they have invested in process and in litigation fights for over 20 years, 21 years. And we on the right have really only gotten into this in any determined way since the botched 2020 election. And now we haven't caught up to them, but we've closed the gap.
Yeah.
We've closed the gap on election officials inside polling places. We've closed the gap on the number and amount of money going into litigators on our side. We've closed a lot of these gaps. They still have money advantages out the wazoo, but we're at least on the field fighting now. So I mentioned I do work for Center for Renewing America. I also lead the Election Transparency Initiative, which we stood up in February of 2021. It's a joint project of Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life and the American Principles Project. And we have worked month in, month out, year in, year out, and we continue to work to reform elections to obtain transparency and security and accountability. So every American, I don't care, red, white, black, brown, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Vegetarian, whatever, that they can have confidence in the outcome of our elections. And we've made really solid progress. There's a lot more work to do, and it's driving the left crazy, but we're making very solid progress.
Well, I'm glad you brought up those vegetarians. They demand justice, Ken, and I'm glad you're out there fighting for them.
They should demand protein, but whatever.
That's very Maha of you. But let's talk about our side and their side. So you've got Texas down there, potentially 5 seats. We control the entire process. We control New Hampshire. I believe that we could get 1 seat out of New Hampshire. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Indiana's a possibility. Missouri's a possibility. Ohio and Florida. Those are where I see we could go on offense. The thing about their side, and I loved this the other day, Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey says that she's threatening to redistrict Massachusetts.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, because they own everything there, and then they could still own
it. They have since, for the last 3 districtings.
Yeah. But like in all seriousness, if you just played out in your head right now, I don't know where Dems can actually go in the short term. Okay. But so if you had to I asked this of the panel yesterday. If you had a crystal ball and said at the end of this cycle, what are the states and what is the net that you think Republicans have versus them?
I think the net is probably all coming from Texas, and it's those 5.
Do you see any other state, Indiana, Missouri, Florida, Ohio, New Hampshire, even trying?
I think Missouri may do it, but you're looking at a net probably of 1 there.
Okay.
There's really no other state you can really squeeze more than 1 out of. Maybe Ohio, but unlikely.
Yeah.
And Ohio, by the way, as much as Ohio's been in the discussion, it's pretty complicated in Ohio. It's not just pass a new map and vote on it. They have more hurdles than that involved.
Yeah.
And I also agree with you, by the way, on New Hampshire. Could there be a Republican seat out of there? Yes. Will it? Unlikely.
I agree with your analysis on that. Like, I think you could make the 1st district very Republican, and it's sad that they actually have the tools to do it. A Republican governor, Kelly Ayotte, and a Republican legislator, but they're not going to try, and that's kind of sad.
And they didn't have a real redistricting the last go round.
Yeah.
So I mean, they do have a real reason to do this for real now, particularly if they were to get corrected census data.
All right, so let's talk about the census. President Trump putting out this truth, which I don't think, I said this at the beginning of the show. I just want people to understand. The census counts bodies. And I think for most Americans, they go, what? And you go, so if you're in this country illegally, you get counted in our census. So it's not even people in the country legally or citizens. President Trump, wants to change that and do it now. Break down both of those things. Can he do both, either or both?
So I would say yes, but there's no question leaving illegal aliens, let's zero in, out of the count will be litigated. All the more reason to do it now. Let's do it now, mid-decade, not with the time pressure of the 10-year cycle. Do it now and let them fight it out. Let's see where the chips land. And by the way, while we still have Justices Alito and Thomas on the court, doesn't hurt either. But why is it a question? It's a question largely because the question has never been answered. So there's been some recent litigation. Governor Abbott actually was a defendant in a case that went to the Supreme Court in 2016, where the voters tried to say it's a violation of equal protection not to do redistricting based on the voting age population. So let me say that again differently. The argument the plaintiffs were making was that you have to have the same number of voters in every district so that their vote was equal in power to the votes of people in other districts. And the court said that that is not constitutionally required, that but they used interesting language. I actually reread this case again today, thinking we might talk about it. And the court used a lot of the word may. They said the state may use the entire population. And there's also other cases that they referenced in that Supreme Court ruling where they didn't foreclose other ways of counting. Now, there's a good reason not to count illegal aliens just on a basic legal basis. Forget the policies for the moment. They're not supposed to be here. They're not supposed to live here. Well, neither are tourists. And we don't count tourists even if they're in the United States, they are persons. And you could say, it says all persons, the tourists are here, you count them. No, we don't count them. And the law doesn't say we count them. And we didn't used to count.
Would we count a diplomat? I mean, to your point, right. So, okay, because I was just thinking of that as you're saying it. Like, you don't count, and the law doesn't give a diplomat the same legal status if they have a child here, right? So, I mean, it's actually an interesting theme you're bringing up.
Yes, and as you point out implicitly, you do hear a lot of parallels to the birthright citizenship arguments. But here, the key is legitimate residency. As far as I'm concerned, let's say there's 15 million illegals here. They're all fugitives from another country. They're essentially illegal tourists. They don't live here, and we don't agree that they live here. They don't have citizenship here, and they will not have citizenship here. So, these are kind of law school terms, residency, domicile, but they matter in this debate.
I agree.
And in my view, that just if I'm reading tea leaves, again, just because we want an outcome doesn't mean that's what the courts are going to do. But if I had to bet, if I had to put my money on the line, I would bet that we have much better odds of prevailing on excluding illegal aliens specifically. Like long-term green card holders, legal permanent residents, I think we would lose on trying to exclude those. They live here, and they live here with our permission. So not counting them doesn't really make sense. But I think that illegal aliens should just be treated as tourists who are breaking the rules.
And frankly, you bring this up.
I think it'll win.
By the way, on a political basis, I said this the other day on the morning meeting, but I was like, if you want to be the Democrat that argues that people in the country illegally should be counted, God bless you. I'll help fund that. That would be the dumbest political move of anyone. Before I let you go, Ken, I do want to ask you about the state that you and I both live in, Virginia. It is one of two states having an election this year. We have all three constitutional offices. The governor, Youngkin, is term limited, which is a whole nother rabbit hole I don't want to go down because it's stupid. Winsome Sears, the lieutenant governor, is running for governor. Jason Miyares, the attorney general, the job you used to hold, is running for re-election. Right. And John Reed is running for lieutenant governor. Handicap the race for me right now.
So, look, we're across the river from D.C. D.C. is not, it's in our metro section. It's local news. And D.C. is distasteful. And typically, the team out of power in D.C. has real advantages in Virginia running the state elections. And the Democrats, the polling right now suggests that the Democrats are getting the benefit of those advantages. People should also know the House is 51-49 Democrat. And so we either need Winsome Sears to win, and she's struggling a good bit, I'll just put it that way, or we need to pick up one or two of these House seats because the Democrats control the Senate 21-19 as well. And if they get all three, they're gonna turn Virginia into California just as fast as they can.
All right, you said Winsome Sears is struggling. I agree with that. Do you think that there's any hope that we have a 3-0 advantage right now? Yeah. As I said, just quickly, do you think we could possibly go 0-3, or do Miyares and John Reed look like they could at least pick up wins?
So Attorney General Miyares is running for re-election. He's the most likely to win. There used to be a lot more ticket splitting in Virginia than there is today with the polarization that's happened. But if you're going to see something other than a 3-0 or 0-3 outcome, your most likely winner is going to be Jason Miyares, because frankly, he's done a good job. He's zeroing in on public safety, and he has an opponent who's literally let them all out of jail. And look, I'm one of those Republicans that supported and has long supported criminal justice reform. I am not a fry the litterbugs person. But this Democrat, Jones is his name, is just off the deep end on the left on cash bail and all the things we've seen just ruin communities all over the country. And we do have this happening in some communities in Virginia. And Jason has fought it as best he can. The Attorney General in Virginia can't just prosecute crimes all over Virginia. So Jason Miyares can't just stop it from happening. It is got a lot of local control here, but that's a big difference to import that kind of mentality at the state level. So right. Jason Miyares is your most likely Republican winner at the statewide level. And you're going to have to see a bit of a sea change to see the entire ticket win. But it's still early. It's August. Yeah. People should know that voting began. We essentially, sadly, have a 45-day election in Virginia. So voting will start in, 5 weeks or so. Yeah. Even though it'll ramp up as it gets closer to Election Day. Governor Youngkin, when he was a candidate for governor, did a very good job, his team, in using the early voting period better than any Republican had before him. And he has recently announced that he's going to put his PAC money into turning voters out, which, as I said, he's done a good job of in the past. And that will not only help win some Sears and the whole ticket, but hopefully it'll also help in these House of Delegates districts that we need to pick up a couple of so badly.
All right. Ken Cuccinelli, thanks for all the work that you're doing for election integrity and redistricting and all that. Really appreciate your time.
Good to be with you, Sean, as always.
You bet. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.